Welcome everyone to another special interview episode of Chat Grapple and Cheap Pops podcast. I am Chris Dredd. I'm here with my main man J to the B. How's it going, big man?
We are all good.
Gravy, baby. Today another special episode. We're fresh off the back of our episode with Bishop, the homie from Terrible Wrestling Take. Shout out to our man every time. We are going into the British world of wrestling today, very much so, with someone who was integral.
He lived it.
He lived it. He was there through the good times, through the bad times, then the good times, and then the slightly bad times again. And he's still in the business. He's still doing bits and bobs. Really excited to have him on. He is someone who, when I think of British wrestling, I can hear his voice. So it is one of those things that we're just really excited to have him on. So JB, anything to say, bruv?
No, let's get to it without further ado. Let's
go.
This party started.
Welcome everyone to another very special episode of Chat Grapple and Cheap Pops podcast. I am Chris Dredd. I'm here with my main man JB, and today is a very special episode. We've got someone incredible with us. He is the voice of British wrestling in an era that was absolutely fantastic. He was littered through anything that you would watch British wrestling wise. He's incredible. Thanks for joining us today. He is the twisted genius, Mr. Dean Ayass. How are you doing, Dean?
Hello, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. And it's been a busy old time, but yeah, I'm doing well. How are you guys?
We're all right, man. We're just happy to have you on because we've got some British guys lined up for other interviews, and we've because we've only really had American guys on. We've had Sonny Ono, obviously involved with WCW, but
yep.
We just love British wrestling. We wax lyrical about it on various shows, especially when you've got people like Dave Taylor, William Regal on the WCW shows. We go into little. We go off on little tangents about how amazing British wrestling is. And you've been on the scene, been there, done that, got the T-shirts, got the stories. And we're just hoping that you can tell us some of those today.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've been around since the very end of 1993 I started. So, yeah, part of the furniture, I think.
Did you, I heard that you debuted with Dougie Williams around the same time as Doug.
Yeah, we debuted on the very first show. I remember he actually he picked me up from Brighton Station, and we drove to Folkestone. It was the first show we ever did. Yeah, November sometime. It was the week. It was the weekend of the Saturday after the first ever UFC. So whatever the date of the UFC was, it was a week after that one. So yeah, sometime in November '93. Wow. And it was a show at the original Hammerlock School of Wrestling, which was literally a garage perched on a cliff top in Folkestone. And you kind of worried that every time someone took a bump that it would just gradually be collapsing off the cliff, but we survived. But yeah, that was a long time ago. Doug was a high flyer with long ginger hair at that point, and he let's just say he evolved.
He evolved into probably one of the greatest wrestlers this country's ever produced.
Definitely.
The Hammerlock School and the Dropkick schools have literally just pumped out some incredible talent. Who are the main trainers? I know Dino Scarlo was.
Yeah, I mean, Hammerlock was set up by Andre Baker, who passed away about 10 years ago, I think now. And I think, my understanding is that he was a bit of an outcast in British wrestling. I think he didn't like the traditional direction of British wrestling, and wrestling was very much a closed shop in those days. And he was literally the first person to say to the general public, "Do you want to be a wrestler? Here's how you do it. Here's how come in." He opened the door. And so because he was like the only guy in the country doing that, he would have people come from all over. And within a few years, he'd do summer camps for a week. down on the Kent coast, and he'd have people come from all over the country. He had a guy come down for the week from Cumbria called Johnny Moss, who had a stellar career and is now a trainer in his own right. So so Andre was the main guy who ran it, but then he would get other people do it. I mean, he'd do some of the training. I think as time went on, he'd sit behind the desk drinking coffee and getting delegating the roles. Dino was definitely Dino was one of the people who certainly was a big help and a real veteran of the wrestling scene back in those days. As was Jackie Pallo Jr., who was part of that scene as well. So you had a bit of experience with those youngsters. But yes, so many people that came out of that school. I think it took it was only after Andre had passed away and a few years had passed and people kind of took a step back and looked at the body of work that the Hammerlock School of Wrestling had produced, that they realized, my goodness, this is something special, because you've got a place that produced Doug Williams, Fergal Devitt, Finn Balor, Zack Sabre Jr., all from the same place, and there's not many places that can claim a record like that.
That's incredible. Dean, sorry to butt in. You are the co-host of Because WCW.
Yeah.
Tons of fun wrestling podcast based on something we both love, WCW, or everyone loves. Two-part question: why WCW, and why not necessarily a British wrestling thing where you could have dished the dirt and had billions of followers and listeners?
It all came about when the guy who I hosted with, Liam Happ, who's a sports journalist, he was, I think at the time he worked for Yahoo, he now works for DAZN Boxing, big wrestling fan, someone I've known for years myself. And it was when there's a company I do some stuff for called Hooked on Wrestling. We do pay-per-view viewing parties. We just recently did AEW All Out. We did SummerSlam before that. I'm sure we'll go into that in a bit. But we did a spoken word tour with Bruce Pritchard. Something to wrestle with, kind of on the road podcast tour, and Liam came up to me at the end of the London one. He may have had something to drink, and he proposed this idea of, would you like to do a podcast about WCW, because there's not an awful lot out there and it'd be kind of niche, and we'd get a little core following, and I absolutely loved WCW back in the day. And I just jumped at the chance, said, "Yep, let's do it. That sounds great." So it's such a crazy story. It's one of those things. I mean, we've just celebrated 100 episodes. We had an interview with Lance Storm as our last one. So yeah, if you go to becauseww.podbean.com or just put Because WCW into wherever you get your podcast from, you'll find it.
But yeah, we'll make sure we have it along the bottom. So
excellent.
We'll have the Twitter on there as well.
Yeah, just down there somewhere. There you
That's
go.
right, absolutely.
And it's just one of those things. The more you look into it, the deeper you dig, the more fascinating it becomes, because you talk to these people and you find out. I mean, Lance Storm gave us a couple of stories that I've never heard before. I've not heard them published anywhere. So yeah, you just discover these things, and then you speak to someone else and you get more crazy WCW stories. So it's the gift that keeps on giving, I guess you could say. And we do watch-alongs of Nitro episodes, we do pay-per-view reviews, we do all kinds of stuff, and it's just it's fun. There is when it's good, it's very, very good, and when it's bad, my God, it's fucking awful. So yeah.
What was that show we sat through? We reviewed, Jordan, and it had like all the old bikers round. It was
that'd be Road Wild or Hog Wild.
Oh no, this was sold out. This was
sold out, and it was the NWO. They took over everything.
Oh, they had their own pay-per-view. Yes,
that's right. And they played everyone's music was just the NWO music, and anyone that weren't in the NWO didn't have any music. And it was just music. Someone saying he sucks, he's ugly. It was incredible. It was like Ted DiBiase and what was he called? The Trillion.
Trillionaire Ted.
Trillionaire Ted. It was fucking awful. But you know, it's entertaining. And, you know, I mean, we do interviews, and we've interviewed mainly, I've had a couple of, we've had Chris Hamrick, we had Sonny Ono from WCW, but we've got, we're not going to spill the tea just yet, but we've got one lined up of someone who was massive in WCW. So that's coming up soon. I'll give you a shout when that one drops, when it's confirmed the date. But yeah, this guy was there pretty much from the beginning all the way through. So hopefully you'll enjoy that one, because we take WCW for what it was. I mean, it's definitely like a rise and fall kind of thing, you know. It really was. It was really shit late 80s, early 90s, got really good.
That's your opinion, Chris. That's not the opinion of the whole show.
No. All right, well, all right, I say that, but I'm here. I'm obviously, you know, I've got so much memorabilia from that time, and it wasn't
1989 NWA was tremendous.
It was
that was tremendous. The Great American Bash 89 and Halloween Havoc and Clash of the Champions 9, Flair v Funk, all of that was tremendous. And then it did dip.
It dipped in the, like, maybe 1991, 92.
I'd say 1990, 91 it dipped, and then 92 it picked up again because you had the Dangerous Alliance angle, you had the what I think is the best War Games ever with Wrestle War 92, Sting Squadron and the Dangerous Alliance, and then it dips again when Bill Watts comes in 92, and 93 is a pretty barren year, and then but then you get the title reign of Big Van Vader, who I absolutely loved.
Fantastic.
That's where they're big in the UK because they have David Boy Smith come over, and then 94 Hogan comes, and the product quality drops, but the numbers go up, and then obviously 96 the NWO angle, and boom, it explodes.
Yeah.
And I mean, the first episode that we ever did, we looked at Starrcade 97, and we deliberately chose that because it was the biggest show they ever did, but you can also trace back the downfall of WCW starts, the roots are at that show because they blew the Hogan Sting angle match, storyline, whatever you want to call it.
Sure. Because
Hogan's ego wouldn't allow him to lose cleanly. And they had the fast count from Nick Patrick and all that stuff. Yeah. And had things been different, then who knows? But I mean, one thing, I mean, there's never one thing in particular that you can pinpoint as the reason behind the death of WCW, but one thing that everybody mentions as a major factor was the fact that these guys had creative control in their contract, and they could just turn around and say no. So I mean, one thing Lance Storm said to us when we spoke to him recently was like that Nitro was booked week from week. They didn't know what they're doing one week to the next because you couldn't make long-term storylines, because if you had a long-term storyline for, say, Randy Savage, and on week 3 he's like, no, I don't want to do that anymore, you had to go with that because he had creative control in his contract.
That's crazy.
Controlling 7-figure sums over a year, like, it almost sounds a little familiar. I'm not going to take that much of a dive onto that right now, but yeah.
I mean, do you, so some people do draw comparisons with AEW and WCW. Yeah. And obviously, you know, with the fact of, you know, Dusty's son being involved and all this kind of stuff, the TNT stuff, Sting being there. Yeah. We have spoken as well about, people say ultimately Tony Khan does have the final say on it. But when you've got a booking committee of the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega and guys who are active roster wrestlers, and they've actually got the gold, and they have had the gold for quite a while. They only just, I mean, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen All Out, the Bucks aren't the champions anymore. But you know, you can see why people draw the comparisons. But can you see any similarities? And I mean, you know,
I mean, there is, the obvious comparison, as you say, they're on TNT, and the good thing, the positive, is that they are providing, I think they will certainly now. We've got the people that they've got in. They'll be providing a viable alternative in competition to the WWE, and my God, we've needed that, because
Oh yeah.
wrestling in a monopoly is just terrible. It gets lazy because they don't have to try, basically.
Mm.
You look at the Attitude Era was the most successful era that the WWF had ever had, and that was all born out of reacting to the competition in WCW. I think it's hard to say right now, because Cody, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, they're all at the peak of their game. They're all able to perform at that top level. So I think even if they were nothing to do with the booking, they would still be in those positions that they're in. And the Young Bucks have shown, they've I remember them putting over Private Party in the first round of the tag team tournament. I've said they lost this week. There's, at this moment in time at least, there doesn't appear to be any issues around them putting people over, and it makes sense that they'd be at the top of the card, not just for the reasons that of the fact that they're very good at what they do, but because they are part of the back office, they're going to be there at every show. You don't have to worry about them going off somewhere else or screwing you over and turning up in another promotion. They are theirs. So it all makes sense. I think the tester will be when they start getting a bit older and it's time to move them down the card. Like, for example, Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian, veterans who, they weren't at the top of the card, but they're working with younger guys and bringing them up. And I'd imagine Christian Cage might go down that route in a little while as well. So it's then, if your ego gets in the way as such, but the atmosphere that the feeling that you get coming out of there isn't like that at the moment. I mean, I think it's hugely significant that the very first words to come out of CM Punk's mouth when he debuted on Rampage was putting over Britt Baker. So they seem to be keen to develop new talent and push people, and we've seen people come through starting at the bottom and working their way up, like Jungle Boy, Eddie Kingston being brought in as a one-off and then being signed to a contract. So there does feel like there is a different atmosphere, and the fact that they've now brought in Punk and they've brought in Danielson, to me that is the equivalent of this generation's equivalent of Hall and Nash jumping to WCW. But the difference is, like I said this on Twitter recently, that Hall and Nash were interested in putting themselves over and making themselves as much money and screw everyone else. That's the impression you get from watching things. Whereas Punk and Danielson, you get that they have more of a holistic love of wrestling, and they want to just get things moving for this company and help nurture the new talent.
I mean, I'm a massive MJF mark. I think he's
tremendous,
just absolutely tremendous. And he's like he is like an old school heel. And Jericho's been working with him for quite a while. I do think that we said this on the last episode. I'd love to see MJF interrupt CM Punk at some point and call him Philip. And just literally just give him the MJF treatment. I think it'd be incredible. So I mean, we're hoping as well that AEW does become huge and does become. I mean, it already is massive. It already is being seen. I mean, can I be honest as well? I'm pretty sure you'll agree as well. I don't think maybe WWE took AEW as seriously as they should have done. No. They definitely haven't thrown money at certain people that they should have thrown money at, or at least tried to give them something. But I mean, someone like Adam Cole, I don't know if they were ever going to be able to keep him.
I think Adam Cole, with Vince and Bruce Pritchard taking over NXT, I think Adam Cole saw the writing on the wall. He wasn't going to fit in. That made total sense to me for him to go. I think they probably could have kept Bryan Danielson, but from what we read, he wanted to go out to Japan, and it sounds like with Danielson, he wanted to expand his repertoire artistically. Right? He's made the money. And the same with CM Punk. He's made the money. It isn't about money. This is about just doing something for their own good. But I mean, going back to MJF. Absolutely, you're spot on. He's tremendous. I mean, I worked with him on a couple of shows shortly before AEW was formed. He came over for IPW.
Oh shit!
And
I'm pissed. I missed it.
yeah, he was. He did a couple of shows for us, and just absolutely tremendous. There's a few people that you look at them and you look at everything they do, and you just know, you just say to yourself, they've got it. They get it. They get
Yeah.
wrestling, and Jericho is one. You know, the way that Jericho was always reinventing himself. You know, even as a cocky heel in WCW, he was funny, but he wasn't making himself a cool heel. He was funny, but making himself look a dick and putting the baby faces over. Then when he was in WWE, constantly reinventing himself. MJF is another one that, yeah, he just understands. He's all, you know, on Twitter, he's in character all the time. I mean, I remember just tagging him in a post promoting one of the shows, saying I'll be commentating on this and haven't seen these guys live. And I can't remember what he said, but yeah, he basically said something in character, putting me down. And you know, and we had this back and forth Twitter exchange, both totally in character, both totally understanding what we were doing. And well, I've had it before where, yeah, you have a Twitter exchange with someone, especially an American, that I find that they can take themselves a bit too seriously sometimes, and they get a bit shitty with it. But he got it, and the other person who absolutely gets it, and when he retires, must be kept on by whatever company kept on is Spud, Drake Maverick, whatever you want to call him. He absolutely understands every single thing he's doing. He's tremendous.
Man, I've watched. We have seen Spud grow from.
Yeah.
It's been actually an incredible journey for him. You know, from just being Spud and then Rockstar Spud, and then, you know, what he did with TNA. He was incredible with TNA. You know, then he went, you know, even the fact that he was fired from WWE and then was able to kind of just make it work. And they was like, actually, no, we need this guy, you know. And again, we've spoken about it before on the podcast. British wrestling, we have created some in this country, some of the most fantastic workers who just get it, you know, and are just technically absolutely brilliant. On the stick, absolutely fantastic. You know, and I don't know what it is about this country. I think it is probably the rich legacy of British wrestling that we've had going through from, you know, very, very early on. You know, you're looking, what, 60 years of at least 60 years of this kind of history.
No, absolutely. I mean, if do you remember Wrestle Talk TV on Challenge that they
Absolutely.
had on after Impact? I was a guest on there several times, and I remember at one point I said, and I stand by this today, I said British wrestlers are the best in the world. I genuinely believe that.
Agreed.
That's not me, you know, being patriotic and waving the little flag. That is my genuine belief, because you think about the size of this country. We're a population of about 60 million, compared to the size of the US or the population in Japan, which is a lot bigger, or Mexico. The ratio of, you know, good wrestlers, great wrestlers to one population is unparalleled. And yeah, you look at NXT, the WWE Performance Center. Two of their main trainers are Robbie Brookside and Johnny Moss, both, you know, legends of British wrestling. I mean, Norman Smiley is also, you know, technically British, but he grew up in the States, so I wouldn't count him in that as the wrestling pedigree.
Didn't they have Dave Taylor as well? They had
Dave
Nigel
Taylor.
McGuinness.
Dave Taylor's gone over, trained there. Nigel McGuinness. Johnny Saint went over there as well. James Mason does a lot with the UK Performance Centre, and you know, and a lot of the UK guys that started out in NXT UK are then are moving over to the NXT in the US. So, you know, Pete Dunne, the Grizzled Young Veterans. Now you've got Kaylee Ray's relocated over there. My old mate Martin, Danny Birch, he's been over there for several years as well.
Yeah.
And they've all got a different. So Martin, so Danny Birch, Martin Stone, who's known
Martin
as
Stone,
over here,
yeah.
Of someone I've worked very, very closely with over the years. He can do the technical wrestling, but his style was a lot more of a hard-nosed brawler. But even with that, he brings that kind of tough, hard-nosed football hooligan style character across, which you don't, an American couldn't portray because they don't understand that culture. They don't have that in the US. So you got something unique there.
He was so over at the UK Championships in Blackpool. It was the songs about Danny Birch just going on, like the minute he walked out, it was almost as if he was the most popular guy there. Yeah. Until Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne had sort of worked the 2 nights and made themselves the stars of the show. And the songs were just all about Danny Birch. It was just such a. I mean, it wasn't something I was expecting when I got there. Like I was, I didn't know what I was expecting. To be fair, it was just one of those sort of crazy weekends. But yeah, the Danny Birch things. It was incredible to see, like just wild singing and almost a football atmosphere when he came out. It was
and it always makes me laugh because when we have the UK shows that get shown on the network and American fans watching, one of the things I hear from so many people is, how does everyone know the tunes? Because and you try and explain, well, these are football songs.
Yeah.
And I'm not an NFL fan at all. I don't know anything about it, but from what I gather, like any crowd chants in American football are like "Let's go," insert name of team and things like that. Whereas we have all manner of songs. I'm an Ipswich Town fan. We have a variety of songs, lots of which are about Delia Smith and where she can put sausages and things like that. But it's just, and you see it on forums like, oh, this player's arrived, right? What song can we sing about him? And it's just so someone makes it their responsibility to go away and think of a tune, a popular tune that you can make a song about this footballer to. So it's just the culture over here.
The British crowds are, we did the WWF shows. We've reviewed those, the UK ones, and the crowds are absolutely rabid because they were just hungry, really hungry for wrestling in general. And the fact that the WWF, brought these guys over, it was incredible. The one that was at the Docklands Arena that we did was the mate. What was it, Jordan? The one
Carnage, wasn't it?
Capital Carnage. That's right, Capital Carnage. It was, the crowd was just absolutely crazy, and they had, like you say, the football horns. The chanting Vinnie Jones was on there. Giving people red cards and yellow cards and that. And it's you hear it in the crowds. That kind of culture. We just absolutely love it. It's incredible as well because the top guys in wrestling at the moment, you could see the majority of them on this show. So, I mean, AJ Styles is still going great guns in WWE. I mean, obviously CM Punk, he's come back recently to AEW. You've got Samoa Joe, who's now come back to NXT. He's got the strap. It's just absolutely just filled with stars. And one match that I think is absolutely incredible is, we've spoken about this kind of British wrestling tradition, the Steve Gray Mal Sanders match.
Do you know what I loved?
Incredible
commentating on that. Out of all the matches we had, there was something special about that for me, because I grew up as a kid watching that style and listening to Kent Wharton's commentary. So I mean, if you listen to that show, when it comes to that match, I'm not trying to imitate Kent Wharton, because no one could do that, but I certainly kind of bring my tone of voice down a bit, and it's softer and calmer. And one thing that I learned from watching Kent Wharton as a commentator is that you don't have to be talking all the time, because your job as a commentator is to enhance the viewing experience. So it's like if I'm commentating on Steve Gray and Mal Sanders and Steve Gray puts a wrist lock on, there's no point in me saying Steve Ray with a wrist lock because you can see that. So I'd say like Steve Ray with the wrist lock, he's trying to keep control of his opponent by moving him around there, and he can link. You know, if he's got the wrist lock on, he can then grab the arm. He can do other moves. You add information to what you're telling people to make it a better experience. You know, in the same way that you watch a football match, you can see that so and so's on the ball, and you can see that he's got someone to the left of him and someone to the right of him, whatever. You want to get that understanding from an ex-pro as to why they're doing something. It's a similar thing with wrestling.
I thought it was incredible when you're commentating there and you describe how a sunset flip isn't called it wasn't called a sunset flip.
Double leg Nelson.
That's the fit. It was a double leg Nelson. It's shit like that I just fucking love, man. It's like it's that tradition. Incredible.
Yeah, and I'd never until I remember the very first time that they showed WWF wrestling on ITV as part of the wrestling package. It used to always be joint promotions. Then they had joint promotions for about 2 weeks of the month, and All Star for 1 week and WWF for 1 week. And that was one of the sort of the death knells of British wrestling, because 1 week you'd have Pat Roach and Rasputin in Digbeth Town Hall in front of 1,000 people, and then the next week you'd have Hogan and Savage lumberjack match, 20,000 people at Madison Square Garden.
That's right, yeah.
It didn't compare, and that's something else. I've had discussions on Twitter with Dave Meltzer about this, and you can tell that he doesn't understand that in this country we don't have, or we certainly didn't in the 80s, we didn't have the big venues. I mean, we have a handful in this country now, but you had like Wembley Arena that they ran once or twice a year, which was a 10,000 capacity. And other than that, you were in halls that held 1,500 people each time.
That's right.
So yeah, but yeah, with watching the WWF, it was like, what's a sunset flip? What's an atomic drop? I've never heard of these, because an atomic drop was a base of the spine drop.
Yeah.
And you think about a sunset flip because the wrestler's going over like that, like the sunset makes perfect sense, sounds a lot better. And so yeah, you have the evolution of these moves, and British wrestling now is more really American wrestling with a British accent than British wrestling itself. But yeah, I just remember, that brought back memories of my childhood. But that show actually, I was working backstage at the International Showdown show itself. I was like working as they call it, they're working the gorilla position, getting the guys ready, making sure people are going out in time, filming a few promos backstage. There's a promo in a bar with CM Punk, and I remember filming that, and just that was a one take job, and being absolutely blown away, because I didn't know much about him at the time. Just being blown away at this guy's promo ability, which Pipe Bomb comes along 15 years later or whatever. So
yeah.
But they actually then flew me to Dublin to record the commentary in post-production, and I did that at the Wrestling Channel studios in Dublin. So I was flown in and out in a day, which was an experience. That was a great time. But yeah, it wasn't done live. It was done in post-production.
Two-part question. This first question means nothing really. Will you be looking to take any commentating tips off of Donald Trump this weekend? He's doing Triller and doing the fights over there. And the second one is way more serious. It's what is the state of British wrestling for you? How do you feel? What's keeping you kicking and what's pissing you off?
I think the day that I take any tips on anything in life from Donald Trump is the day they put me in a little home or something. The state of British wrestling, it's interesting because I think we're not there yet, in that we're not fully up and running yet. I think we've noticed. I've noticed that some promotions are running more shows than others, but what a lot of people won't know is that there's still a lot of venues that are not yet comfortable with having wrestling at their shows. And I think that's because of the not just the close physical proximity of the competitors, but you've got dives to the outside, and so if you're sitting in the front row, you can't socially distance or anything from a wrestler diving towards you. So there's a lot of places that are quite reticent at the moment. I think it's going to take until the next calendar year for maybe a little bit of normality, hopefully, to come into things. But I think if there's one word I'd sum up, I'd say it's recovery, because there's a lot of things British wrestling's recovering from. It's recovering from COVID, as we've just said, which obviously the whole country is recovering from that. It's recovering from losing a lot of top stars to NXT UK and elsewhere, but mainly independent stars getting signed up by them. And then while we've been in the pandemic, obviously we've had everything going on with speaking out, and so there's a recovery and a learn from there. And I mean, I've noticed, for example, with Fight Nation, the promotion I'm involved with as a commentator, and I'm part of their committee as well, that some things that were there already are now like in writing. So we have a code of conduct for wrestlers, we have a code of conduct for fans. We have safety officers backstage who are, that will be clearly visible. I mean, we always had separate dressing areas for male and female competitors, but now it's written, documented that we have to have that. We have to have a paramedic, which we had before anyway. So, and also those people are getting contracts sent over to them with notification of dates and getting deposits paid to them and things that are very that I haven't had before. I've never signed a wrestling contract in my life. Everything I've ever done in wrestling has been based on a handshake, and I accept the world is changing, things are different, and things need to be a bit more official and a bit more professional. We've got disciplinary procedures if something happens. So even if like the head of the promotion was accused of something improper, there will be procedures in place to hear that and to deal with the situation. And obviously we had an all-party parliamentary group that I was part of that inquiry as well, where they've looked at what had been happening, and that just having that gravity to things lends it more credibility. So and I think with training schools as well, that that's where they're talking about making wrestling training classified as a sport, so that then coaches are bound by the same laws as like a football coach or a rugby coach or whatever, where
like vetted.
Yeah, most jobs.
Well, A, vetted, but B, it's about that. And we heard stories about this during speaking out, where that you'd have a trainer who would then become sexually involved with a 17-year-old trainee. And at the moment, by law, there is nothing illegal about that because it's over the age of consent. But obviously, there's a massive moral wrongdoing there.
It's like the power dynamic, isn't it? That's
yeah. And this is where it's law at the moment for sport coaches that even if they're above the age of consent, you're in a position of authority and influence and power. Therefore, it's you cannot do anything. The same. My other half's a teacher, and obviously any teacher, even if they're teaching people that are sixth formers, they by law they cannot get involved in a relationship with, and rightly so, with those pupils. They're trying to put that in the same category, which at least would give people some legal protection. So yeah, it's going to be a long road. I think the thing that everyone needs to be aware of or realize is that you're never going to be able to stop someone from having having the thoughts, the temptation of doing something wrong if that is their mindset. Because that's their mindset, you can't change that.
People are going to be dicks. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, what we can control is the opportunity to do that. So yeah, by having these guidelines and policies backstage at a wrestling show or in a training school, you are lessening the opportunity for anyone who wants to do anything wrong to do that, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
And that, that realistically, I think that's what, not just in wrestling, in society in general, that's as much as you can do. And then I think the other thing that I've certainly learned this, and I'm sure other people have as well, is if you see something that doesn't quite look right, be nosy and go and ask and check that someone's okay. Because I've read before about people who came out about being in abusive relationships, and I remember seeing the girl at a show looking upset, and her boyfriend was in the vicinity as well, and I assumed they'd had an argument, and I'm like, I don't want to get involved. And actually, with the perfect benefit of hindsight,
Absolutely,
I should have gone over there and said, "Are you okay?" Now, whether she would have said anything to me or confided in me, who knows? Probably not. But at least you're giving them the opportunity to say something, and things like making people aware of phone numbers they can call, emails they can send, websites they can visit, whatever, so that they can, they've got a place or to speak out, as the name of the movement goes.
I mean, in a way, I think that coronavirus and all the COVID lockdowns and stuff like that actually enabled speaking out to happen, because you had a lot of wrestlers people just kind of on the internet. A lot of people maybe thinking about their career paths and stuff like that. And it kind of created an atmosphere where it kind of let this stuff come out. I mean, there was a few cases, and ones that Jordan and myself and whatnot have been aware of, that what happened before speaking out. But speaking out as a general movement, I think the coronavirus and COVID restrictions, and actually it might have been a good thing in a way, where it's allowed all the kind of shit to come to the surface and enabled that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right in that it helped these things come out, because you just don't know, and we never will know, because obviously it didn't happen, but you just don't know. If someone did there might have been someone who wanted to say something, but they're booked on the same show as me next week, or I'll have to see them in a few weeks' time, or I'll have to face their friend, or fans will read about this and might react to me. Yeah. So that may very well have made people hesitant to come out and speak about these things. So I think it's no coincidence that happened, because it gave people that kind of a breathing space while nothing's happening. And that's what I mean when I said that we don't really know quite where things are going to end up yet, because we're only just starting shows up. So I mean, I have seen one promotion who hired someone who had accusations made against them, and I'm choosing my words carefully, because obviously there's from a legal perspective, as far as I'm aware, no charges have been made, so you have to use words like allegedly and stuff, and that doesn't mean we don't believe people. It just means we're acting within the law. But someone there was a promotion I saw down in the south of England that used a wrestler who had accusations made out against them. There's been outcry on Twitter. As far as I'm aware, that person wasn't used again. So it's I think if the social media means that there's good and bad to social media, but as far as kind of safeguarding people and looking out for people goes, it can be used as a positive tool in that respect as well.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely right. I'm in a way, I mean, you've obviously seen the positive effect that it's had on, or one promotion in particular for you. Do you think that other promotions will stick to it, or do you think it could slide?
I think it could slide. I think that if it does start to slide, then there will be people again on your Twitters and your Instagrams holding them to account. There have been some people who've done some tremendous work just to highlight things and to make people aware of what's going on and to kind of link things together and tie things together with different people. I think, yeah, it's human nature that you will kind of go back to, you revert to type, you revert to what you're used to, and so the danger, there's a possibility that, you know, things could just revert to how they were before, where it was a lot more lax. But I think now this has happened, it won't be the same again. I think, you know, we're coming up this weekend to the 20th anniversary of 9/11. No one's ever flown a plane into a building like that happened since, but we still undergo a lot stricter security at airports when we're allowed to travel, of course.
Sure.
Because of that, and right, you know, nobody's going to say, you know, an airport security, it's been 20 years since 9/11, why have I got to take my belt and shoes off or whatever?
Sure.
We understand that's the world, you know, at that point in time the world changed, and I think at this point in time with British wrestling, or not just British wrestling, it's around the world, independent wrestling, the world, the wrestling world has changed, and this is how things are now. And I think if there are promotions that don't abide by those rules, then they'll get called out by fans, by other promoters, by whatever it might be, and yeah, you know, it'll be then down to them how they want to react to things.
I mean, it's true, like you say, and there, even before speaking out, there were people talking about this kind of stuff, but then COVID created the atmosphere, that little bit of a buffer between people to be able to tell their own stories. Definitely, and not have to see these guys in the dressing rooms or thinking, shit, I'm booked on a show with this, so blah. So it has definitely helped. But if maybe we can go back a little bit and try and, in going back, kind of look forward. So I said at the beginning of this that you were still are really the voice of British wrestling in an era where it was absolutely golden. We had the Wrestling Channel, we had FWA, we had 1PW,
we had Power Slam magazine,
we had fucking Power Slam, man. We had, you know, even Fighting Spirit magazine. You know, we had, you know, I couldn't wait to get my Power Slam. I couldn't wait to get my FSM. You know, I couldn't wait to see this stuff. You know, we were literally spoiled. You know, we had. I mean, I've got me FWA in British Uprising signed by Jerry Lynn.
Great show, yeah.
You know, I've got me Part 2 signed by Jodie Fleisch. You know, it's
now that show. I remember that after the British Uprising one in York Hall, and I had terrible flu that day. I was absolutely dreadful, and obviously I couldn't miss the show. There's no way I was going to miss it, and I just remember rocking up to the York Hall, looking and feeling absolutely fucking dreadful. And that is why I think at the beginning, either the beginning of the match or even before the match begins, I get sent to the back so I can't interfere. The real reason behind that was I could not manage. I managed to do a promo earlier on in the show, but there was no way that I was going to be able to go out there and be a manager and, you know, banging on the mat and doing all the stuff. I was absolutely fucked. So they're like, well, we'll do that. We'll send you to the back. Yeah. So still got paid the same blessing, but didn't really do an awful lot that day.
Because you had a bit of a feud with Greg the Truth Lambert.
Yes.
You know, going
manager. Yes. Yeah.
Right.
And that was that. I mean, it was great fun, but at the same time, it was so difficult because I found it's just so difficult being a babyface manager because you're essentially a promo and a cheerleader. And I remember at Uprising 3 where we had Jimmy Hart as special guest referee for our match, and that just came back because he happened to be in the country. So the FWA officials were like, well, do you want to come and do something? And so they got him. And from all accounts of the people who wrestled in the match, he was like the worst referee ever because he wasn't a referee. But I remember talking to him before the match, and we ended up chatting for about an hour. So, you know, when the time flies, and then you get a knock from someone going, guys, you're on soon. They're like, shit, we better get ready. But I remember him saying to me, because once, you know, he knew what my role in this match was, and he goes, oh man, babyface manager is so difficult. And I just thought, thank fuck for that, because if Jimmy Hart finds it difficult, then I suddenly don't feel too bad about finding it difficult. But yeah, I was put with Paul Burchill because, I mean, I saw him at the FWA Academy and was, as everyone was, blown away by this guy and said, you know, I'd love to work with him. And then when they wanted to bring him to the main roster, they didn't want to have him talk for the simple reason that if you ever, you may have heard him do a few promos when he was in WWE, especially as the Pirate, but he's very posh. He was from Guildford in Surrey, very and lovely bloke, but very posh. So the monster, the growling, snarling monster, couldn't talk because as soon as he opened his mouth, he'd ruin everything.
Kills it, yeah.
Yeah. Same reason Abyss wore a mask. You look at his face and he's like got this, you know, very kindly, cuddly bear face. And it's like, that doesn't look like a monster. Put a mask on him. So they had me with Burchill to do that. And also just at the beginning to kind of guide him through if he got stuck or needed help or anything. And he was such a quick, natural learner that, you know, very quickly, he didn't need me for anything like within the frame of the match, and so I was just like a cheerleader and a promo guy, and until he went to the WWE. But yeah, it was great. I loved working with Greg. It was great fun. He was someone who's always very receptive to any feedback as a new manager. I'm still in touch with him now. We're still great friends to this day, and yeah, we had genuine, really good fun doing that feud.
That's crazy. I remember like the younger version of me being blown away by Burchill and how, and I as a much younger version of me, you know, in 2004, 5, maybe even a bit later, it just felt like he was can't miss. Remember seeing him, I think it was, now this, I'm not 100% on the name of the team. I think they were called Hampton Court.
Yes, they were.
I think, yeah,
the Duke of Danger and his butler Simmons.
His butler, that's right. Yeah, he
and Buttercup the maid.
He messed them up in Broxbourne. One fine evening, Broxbourne was
love that. Place. We love that place, Broxbourne Civic Hall, man.
Oh, such a good venue. Such a good venue. Yes,
that's where I got to see AJ Styles live. That was one of those things. It was, an absolute killer place. I thought he was can't miss, and I'm not like. Obviously, he made his move to WWE. They put him as a Pirate and didn't really work out. Is there anyone else that you saw that you thought this is the one, and it didn't quite turn out?
Yeah, I mean, with Burchill, I think it was in the FWA and in Britain in the smaller rings, he looked enormous. Yeah. When he went to the WWE, he was still big, but he was like a medium-sized guy. So he was like too big to be with the cruiserweights, but he was too small to be like a giant guy doing flips. Yeah, bearing in mind that at this time in OVW, you got Brock Lesnar doing a shooting star press, so he was in that awkward in between place. But I mean, you know, tremendous wrestler. But I think they just didn't know what to do with him. After they'd put him with Regal and Taylor to kind of, and that was to get acclimatized to being a Brit living in the US. So, you know, what better way than to put him with fellow Brits who've been there for a while. But yeah, they just didn't quite know what to do with him. They tried a few things. Apparently, the from legend is that the Vince McMahon was thinking of like a Long John Silver pirate and had never seen Pirates of the Caribbean, and so didn't understand what this gimmick was about and nixed it. Other people that I think were kind of calmest, I always absolutely loved, as he was called in the WWE, Luke Harper. I thought he was just tremendous. I remember he when the WWE came over to the Brighton Centre, I'd always go along. And people will often think, why are you going to watch WWE at your local hall? Aren't you past that? But when you watching these guys who wrestle 300 times a year, and you watch the little things that they do live that you wouldn't necessarily see on TV, you pick up and you learn so much, and you can gauge things like the merchandise that the crowd are wearing. And I mean, I remember watching, the only time he ever came over to Brighton, but watching John Cena in the main event, and it was just so good to watch this guy who wrestles so many matches a year, because he was a full-time wrestler still at this point, and how he would wrestle a safe style that meant that him and his opponent could go out and do the match day after day, but still make it an entertaining match for people. And it was fascinating to watch that. But watching Luke Harper, there were just little things, the way he'd sell things, the positioning in the ring, the interaction with the crowd, that were tremendous. And I think from listening to podcasts with interviews with the man himself, it was that the look that he had with the straggly hair and the long beard, Vince McMahon saw him as like a southern hillbilly hick, and he was from New York State and couldn't do a southern accent. That wasn't who he was, and just wasn't kind of positioned right. And then he went to AEW. They repackaged him a little bit as a kind of a cult leader. I still don't think he obviously didn't hit his stride fully there because of sadly what happened with him. But he is definitely someone that I thought was absolutely tremendous, and they should and could have done more with.
Do you think as well at the moment, what with AEW signing the people they have, and with WWE seemingly making decisions that kind of don't make any bloody sense, and do you think that it would take Vince McMahon completely getting the F out, basically, and getting some other guys in to take control for I mean, because we spoke about the Attitude Era being a direct result of them having to change things up and get better because of the competition from WCW. I personally, at the moment, don't see that WWE are even they don't even want to acknowledge, they don't want to even look at AEW to the point where they're even seeing it as a threat or whatever. Do you think that could, I mean, WWE is a huge company, multi-billion pounds or whatever, but are they really fucking up right now?
I think it's interesting. It's the signing of Punk and Danielson is our generation's Hall and Nash in '96, but it's a different world in that back in '96 it was all about TV ratings. You wanted to get ratings higher than your rivals. Now, obviously, people still want to do that, but the money now and money came from pay-per-views back in those days. Now, obviously, they still do pay-per-views, but WWE do pay-per-views as part of the network over here and Peacock over in America. So,
Sure.
What they're interested in, where they make their money, are from network Peacock subscriptions, and from the main money comes from selling TV rights, and that TV rights deal isn't going to be up in America for I don't know how many years, but a long time. So they basically need to have a valuable product come renewal time. So long as they've still got people watching, they'll be okay. And I think in that respect, they wouldn't be as bothered as had this happened a generation ago, because there isn't the same direct competition. Like I do, as I mentioned before, I do work with Hooked on Wrestling, and we do pay-per-view viewing parties, and we did SummerSlam at the end of August. 2 weeks later, we did All Out AEW, and it was interesting to see the difference between two. I mean, one was on a Saturday, one was on a Sunday, so that makes a difference anyway. But SummerSlam had about 30-40% more people in, and I did notice there was a crossover. There were people who came along to both, but and we found this all around the country, because we run parties all up and down the country, and about 10 to 15 different venues for SummerSlam and about 6 different venues for AEW. The AEW crowd were a different crowd to the WWE, with like a Venn diagram, a little bit in the middle, but generally they're different. So I think so long as WWE keep their audience, and if AEW is bringing in like maybe a lapsed audience, the old WCW fans, the old TNT viewers, they won't be so bothered. If they start losing viewers to the opposition, which is what happened in the Monday Night Wars, then they'll get worried, because that could then eat into their profit margins and then their TV deals. I think with the Monday Night Wars, when wrestling really boomed, the overall number of people watching both programs massively increased. So you had a lot of these lapsed or casual fans coming back, and then it was a matter of dividing them up. So I think if you look at the viewing figures of Raw before and after, the numbers aren't massively different. It's just then compared to WCW at the time. So I think their priority is going to be making sure that their revenue sources stay in control, which is your subscriptions and your TV rights.
And a trip to Saudi Arabia.
So, which I never bother watching for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're right that I think the audiences are massively different, and until I think WWE does have a slightly younger audience.
Yep.
They've got a huge amount of say maybe 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds, and not necessarily that many younger people watching AEW. I do think it is more of a Wrestling Observer, New Japan Pro Wrestling kind of smarter fans watching AEW.
And it's a more adult audience. They have a bit of blood, they have a bit of bad language in promos. Definitely it is that audience. And the other thing that the WWE have got, of course, is 30 years of brand recognition. You tell people wrestling, they immediately assume WWF. I think there was a time that Chris Jericho was on the talk show, and the caption said Chris Jericho WWE wrestler, and he was with AEW. So it's to the mainstream. Even when we had TNA come over here each year, and I so miss that. It used to be great. At the end of January, Wembley Arena would be the last leg of their tour, and they'd everyone would go. I'd get because there's one year when they brought a load of British wrestlers in, and I'm good friends with the TNA UK reps. I always got complimentary tickets anyway. But one year, to earn my keep, they got me to write all the profiles of the British wrestlers that went in the program. So if you ever brought a program and got a profile of Will Ospreay or Big Damo or whoever else was on there, that was me that wrote them. It was great fun. You'd go to the show, you'd go to there'd be an after party in the bar upstairs at Wembley Arena or at the Hilton over the road, and everyone would get absolutely hammered and then they'd all fly home the next day. But it was a great event on the calendar. But what they would more or less sell out Wembley Arena, but the WWE would still sell out the O2, which is bigger, when they came to London. And even though TNA had a larger television audience because they're on free to view television.
On Bravo.
Was it Bravo?
Challenge,
or was it?
I think they were on Bravo and Challenge at one point. Yeah.
I remember them being on. Yeah, they're definitely on Challenge, because that's when Wrestle Talk came off.
TV, that's right.
But even though they got a bigger TV audience because of the better accessibility, the WWE would still do more in ticket sales because of the brand recognition.
Yeah, Coca-Cola, isn't it, of wrestling? It's like everyone knows what, when people talk about wrestling, the WWF, WWE, or they'll still reference Hulk Hogan or someone like that. It's what they last saw back when it was at its most popular for them.
Yeah.
It's.
I prefer, in the cola wars, I much prefer Pepsi Max to Diet Coke or Coke Zero. But if I'm at my pub quiz and it's my turn to be the driver, I'll ask for a diet Coke, and even if I get Pepsi or whatever. But yeah, it's just that you say Coke, and it's the same with wrestling. To the outside world, you say wrestling, they think WWE.
Man, I going back to those TNA shows, I used to bloody love them shows. I used to go every time they were in Wembley. I'd go every single year.
Yeah.
And I think our mutual friend Len Davis was involved with the TNA rings and shipping them about.
Yeah, the rings, the ring crew, the lighting, and all the I mean, Len was absolutely ahead of his time when it came to the tech side of things. I remember the shows that we used to do, RQW in the York Hall, and he'd have the crane cam zooming around, and he set the bar for British wrestling that we get today. I've done some shows where we've had like live internet broadcasts, and we've had a big entrance rig, which a guy called Jack, who's still involved in wrestling, he was involved in the ring crew with Len as well. And you just have that professional quality camera work, the mixing desk, everything, and that didn't happen before Len.
Yeah. I mean, RQW, shout out to Len Davis. I hope you're doing well. I know he's in hospital at the minute. So yeah, we wish him well. But yeah, I mean, we love that. Those TNA days, I used to go all the time, and they really did have a really good roster, and the wrestling was of really high quality. I mean, you had AJ Styles, you had Christopher Daniels, you had, but I think Nigel McGuinness was there at one point as well as, who was he? Desmond Wolf. Yeah, he was Desmond Wolf. Yeah, fucking, I remember it's all coming back to me. I mean, in front of me, I've got my Deluxe Impact figures on the wall, and they had a fantastic roster, and the wrestling was really good at that time. But like you say, the brand recognition of WWF, it was just that they would always sell more tickets. I mean,
and that was the thing. Even when they tried as hard as they tried, that TNA never felt like a viable number two, whereas I think in time there's a chance that AEW could, because you've got the, what you have to realize is that with the fact that Tony Khan and Shad Khan own Jacksonville Jaguars NFL franchise, that opens massive doors in America. That is why they are able to get that TNT deal, because of the connections they've got through that. And obviously, owning a I was going to say Premier League club, but they're not anymore. Sorry, fans. owning a big football club who are nearly doing as well as Arsenal at the moment.
They've got more points in the Championship.
That'll open doors for them. So you've got someone who has, they are infinitely richer than Vince McMahon, and Tony Khan has a genuine passion for wrestling. He's been an observer subscriber since he was a teenager, much like myself.
He was a tape trader as well.
Much like myself, yes. Yeah. I'm not the son of a billionaire, but apart from that, we're almost identical. So you've got Ted Turner had the money to compete with Vince, but never had the passion. And you had one of the many things with WCW is you had so many changes of changes of boss. Yeah. You had so often, or 1 week you'd be going to Dusty Rhodes, then it was Ric Flair, then it was Kevin Sullivan, then it was Bill Watts, Kip Fry, whatever. AEW is always going to be Tony Khan, in the same way that WWE is always Vince McMahon. So there's that same thing of, there's that one person that you ultimately you will go to get the okay for things. So it's set up better than any other company has ever been set up to rival the WWE.
I'm very much an AEW skeptic, and that's not this isn't news for anyone that watches or listens. I completely get that they've got the absolute best tools to work with right now, like talent, everything like that. They've got, but it just needs to clean up. There's so much that needs work, I'm not going to say it infuriates me, because it doesn't, nothing like that. It really does bug me when there are things that could be easily ironed out, silly mistakes, bad timings and everything like that. Like, it just, AEW could easily surpass, already beat NXT week in, week out. But once it started to beat NXT, that's all it was bothered about. It was still only bothered about beating NXT. They should have been hunting Raw down straight away.
Yeah, and I think they will now that they've got the guys they've got in. I think that's taken it. That's taken it to the next level, and I think they've got the intrigue of mainstream fans now with Punk and Danielson arriving. So I think they'll now be pushing on to do that.
It's a lot of egos in one room, though. That's my worry. There's a lot of egos in the room now. There's a lot of voices in the room, and they can't all get their own way.
Yeah, and then that's where it comes down to Tony Khan as the boss man to make
put
the
his foot down.
decisions.
Yeah. I do think AEW, one thing that would really help them is the women's division. If they could lift that up a bit. I mean, Britt Baker's doing all right with the strap, holding her own at the moment. I mean, they've brought some other gals in. But WWE's got a really good group of ladies, so it'll be good to see, the battle of the lasses.
And I think signing Ruby Soho is a great move, because we've said about people who didn't quite fit. You look at her, the hair, the tattoos. She didn't fit in with the WWE to me. I can easily see that Vince McMahon would take a look at her and say, I don't get it. I don't get what this is about. Whereas AEW being a little bit more adult, as we've said, and a bit more kind of subculture, counterculture. You look at someone like Darby Allin. Can you imagine a mixed tag team of Darby Allin and Ruby Soho, and the people that they would attract? Wrestling baby faces get over by fans wanting to be them, and that is why John. Again, we'll go back to John Cena. When he came, I was going to say when he came to Brighton, but even when he wasn't in Brighton and they were just still selling the merch, you would see so many people, mostly kids, but some adults as well, with the T-shirt, with the hat, because they want to look like John Cena. Ultimately, they want to be John Cena. He comes out, they'll do all the can't see me with him. And that is, for a babyface, that is your moment of just enveloping that crowd into wanting to be you, and therefore wanting to support you, and therefore they feel every blow that you take when you're selling. And that's why it's so important for a babyface to sell, because the crowd will, if you're doing your job right, the crowd will feel that with you.
I'm gonna shift gears on you again, Dean. Just quickly, you've done a ton of interviews yourself. Like, I've seen a few of them. I know you're particularly proud of your Bret Hart interview, and why wouldn't you be? It was an excellent one. Have you got a best and a worst? Anyone you've ever had an interview with, and you thought, and please don't say us. Like, I know we've had our
we've had our tech issues.
Had our tech issue, but do you have a best and a worst?
I mean, the worst ones. Obviously, I won't name people here, but I think the worst ones have been where it's been obvious to me that someone has had like a list of 20 questions, and there's been no interaction. It's just question one, and then you give an answer, and it's like question two, and then whereas with us here today, we've had a conversation back and forth. So as far as I think, as far as best interviews that I have kind of carried out, I mean the Bret Hart shows were just very, very special to me. Especially the first one was in my hometown of Brighton, and I also had a dear friend of mine who I think we've known each other since I was about 10 years old, and he lives up in Scotland now. And he actually came down to visit for the week preceding, so he came along to the show, and he actually came when the WWF used to run the Brighton Centre, and Bret Hart was like the headliner. We would go to the shows together. So like, to have that friend of mine come and be there and meet Bret Hart in my hometown meant that'll live with me forever. So and then I made Bret Hart cry, which wasn't the greatest thing, but he's an emotional. I mean, ever since he's explained ever since. Well, I'll tell you. Basically, I have when I'm interviewing people, I always like to ask the question: if you could if you could go back in time and change one thing, what would it be? And I remember I kind of caught Dixie Carter unawares with that, and she, without saying names, she basically said she wished she'd never brought Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff into a TNA wrestling. But so I asked that to Brett, and I didn't. I should have thought about it really, but
there's only one answer I think that he was going to ever say, wasn't there?
Yeah, and he basically just choked up and said, "I'd tell Owen not to go up on that catwalk," and he started getting upset, and I just felt terrible. And when we went backstage, I was so apologetic, and he was lovely about it. He was just, "Look, don't worry," he said, "it happened. You're asking a question. That was my answer. Don't worry about it." And I just said, "Look, I won't ask that any of the other shows," and I didn't. But he was brilliant. He was I've never ever known anyone have so much time for their fans. Like we did this one show in Cardiff, and I think we ended up staying in the building till about 1:30 because he was just signing things for fans and chatting with fans and asking them how they were. And whenever, if we're walking down the street, or one time we went into the Sky Sports News studios to do some stuff with them, he would get stopped for pictures or autographs by people, and every single person he would stop and take the time to fulfill whatever they wanted him to do for them. And yeah, that was amazing. And because one thing that I've learned over the years of being in this business is that the fans of today, some of them will be tomorrow's wrestlers. And I can think of so many people like RJ Singh, Martin Stone, Danny Birch. I remember them being in the audiences of FWA shows. Andy Quilden used to be a regular at Walthamstow. Liam Happ, who does my podcast with me, he was a fan. And that's where people's love of wrestling begins. So you do see some people who take the piss out of fans or just think of them as an annoyance. And it's not only are they, without fans there's no wrestling, but without fans there wouldn't be tomorrow's wrestlers and keep this industry going. I think another interview I did that was very good was one with Matt Hardy, where I did that over the phone. You could just again tell that the guy was really switched on and had recovered from his demons and was in a place. And this was shortly before he created Broken, or he launched Broken Matt Hardy. With hindsight, with hindsight, he'd clearly thought that character was in development at that time.
Yeah.
But it was just great you could kind of tell the cogs were turning there. So there've been some good ones.
A lot of people like to shit on Bret Hart because they I don't think they get where he's coming from. I mean, the amount of times I've watched Wrestling with Shadows is something that I just occasionally bang on and just watch it, because he really did love. I mean, myself and Jordan, as we say, we trained in wrestling. We were trained by the New Breed, and we dealt with, a lot of people in the UK industry, and a lot of people always like to work heel. But Bret was always, he loved being that hero. He loved being that baby face that people could look up to, and he took it really seriously. He really did. And the whole Montreal screw job and him not wanting to lose in front of that Canadian crowd, a lot of people shit on him for that. And it was kind of sad at that time, and when you see him in WCW, he was never the same after that. He really wasn't. And it's really sad, because I mean, I love Bret Hart. I love that heroic character that he had. And I mean, as we said, you've got your Because WCW podcast, and you would have watched a lot of Bret Hart in WCW, and you're nodding in agreement. Do you agree that Bret was never the same after he left WWF?
No, he was never the same. I think the combination of Owen's passing and the screw job just just didn't. He wasn't the same afterwards, and I think he lost his passion for. I mean, he said during that time that he never enjoyed his time at WCW. He never got on with Eric Bischoff. As you say, they didn't know what to do with him. He was basically they gave him, I can't remember the figures, he did tell us at the time, but they gave him a tremendously high offer per year. It was in the millions. He basically, I think it was something like they offered him £1 million more than he was happy to accept.
Crazy.
And, so obviously he did, but but I mean, people think, for example, you hear, he's miserable, he hasn't got a sense of humor. I can absolutely confirm to you, he has we got on very well because both of us have a very, very dry, cynical sense of humor. So we got on great. I mean, I remember one thing when if we had a radio mic at the show, I think most of them we did, I would do the old trick that stand-up comedians do, of I would introduce people, just say from behind the curtain, welcome to an evening with Bret Hart. Please welcome your host for the evening, Twisted Genius, Dean Ayass. So I'm introducing myself, and for some reason he found that hilarious. And like every time, are you introducing yourself again tonight? Yeah, brilliant. And he would sit himself down right next to me, just watch, and then try. And so I'm trying not to piss myself laughing because Bret Hart is pity himself laughing at me. But he had a really good sense of humor. But I think people need to remember that he grew up in a not just a wrestling household, the wrestling household. Bear in mind, his dad wrestled, all of his brothers were wrestlers, all of his sisters married wrestlers. Wrestling was their life. Wrestling put food on their table. So you had to take it seriously because it was your livelihood. Wrestling is not my livelihood. I have a full-time job that pays me a decent living. Wrestling is a passion of mine. If wrestling, if wrestling was suddenly banned by the government tomorrow, it wouldn't affect my day-to-day quality of life. Obviously, my mental health and everything else might decline, but as far as my putting food on the table goes, that wouldn't be affected. Wrestling was their life, so he grew up with that level of seriousness to the business. And then of course you had the dungeon down below where Stu would get these big American footballers who thought wrestling was all bullshit, or as Bret would always say, was horse shit. And he'd stretch them out and show them that actually, if you want it to be, wrestling can be very real. There are lots of holds. If you execute them properly, will do a lot of damage. Obviously you don't during the match, but that's not to say they can't hurt you. So that explains a lot to me. I think he was absolutely within his rights to be like that.
I always give people a wrist lock. That's the one I always choose. If they say wrestling's fake, I'm like, oh yeah, here, bang, get him in a wrist lock, and oh shit, that actually hurts.
I remember, I remember Dino Bravo had a trick that he showed where he could get you down to the floor with one finger. He'd basically put a finger somewhere on your arm, I don't know where it is myself, but some pressure point on your wrist or your arm, and you'd be like, and you'd fall to the floor. Yeah.
I think if the government banned wrestling, I think tape trading would come right back. We'd all go back to the old school way of serious bootleg pay-per-views and stuff like that. Let's talk about because WCW.
Okay, yeah.
Like I said, we've said this already. We've said this, even before we recorded. Like Chris and myself, massive WCW fans. We talk about it a ton on this show. Like whenever we get to go back and review something, even if it's a bad one like Sold Out or really good ones, which they escape me right now. But Wrestle War 92, which we haven't done yet, but we will.
Oh, Wrestle War 92, tremendous. Best war games of all time. And you also get the Steiner boys beating the ever-loving shit out of this poor kid called Takayuki Iizuka.
We did Super Brawl, which had Sting and Luger against
Be the Steiners, yeah.
It's the Steiners, yeah. And
that's one we haven't actually done yet, but someone is penciled in for that one actually quite soon for us. Yeah.
That was
Match of the year, wasn't
yeah,
it?
match of the year. I think that one got that was an absolute stunner. I mean, with a terrible finish, but this is protecting everyone. It was quite good. What's coming up on? Sorry, I'm losing my train of thoughts now.
It's like a Sting promo on a pay-per-view.
It must be, yeah. I'm absolutely gone. What's coming up on Because WCW?
We've just had our 100th episode. Apologies if I repeat myself. We had a good long chat before we started recording, so I'm not sure if some things I've said before we were recording or not. But anyway, yeah, we've just passed our 100th episode. So we just had an interview with Lance Storm to mark that occasion, and that was absolutely fascinating.
We can get that link underneath, yeah. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he told some great stories there. We've got another good interview coming up for our next episode. We've just actually yesterday we put out episode 101, which was one of our watch-alongs. We do pay-per-view reviews, which is normally with a guest, where we just talk about a show that we've previously all watched. Liam and I do Nitro watch-alongs, where we just watch along an episode in real time, and we're doing them in chronological order. So we're at the Disney MGM tapings of Summer '96 at the moment.
It's getting good then.
The one that we just did yesterday was the angle where the NWO beat up people backstage with baseball bats, yeah. And the lawn dart with Rey Mysterio, and it's. Because I'd forgotten a lot of it, in the time that's passed, and it was really interesting to watch because they basically, for that 1 week, they fucked up their own TV show. They had a massive amount of time where there wasn't any wrestling, where they just had these cameras filming all these people lying around and people panicking and ambulances arriving. They had the live crowd chanting boring because there wasn't any wrestling. They had Bobby Heenan walk out for his own safety. In the long run, that really was one of the main things that cemented the NWO angle as a big deal, because it was like they had come in and screwed their show up, and then they had these standby matches. So we had Eddie Guerrero and Big Bubba, which isn't a match you'd normally really see. And then it was meant to be the Giant defending the world title against Arn Anderson, and it ended up being against Greg the Hammer Valentine, who would never be getting a title shot normally. But it's like, well, we've got to do something. So it was. We say it was one of the first times that they had a bit of real life into the show, because you had like Sting being concerned for. Not, they didn't call him Marcus Alexander Bagwell, they called him Mark Bagwell, and they explained that they're good friends and that they train together in Sting's gym. And I mean, they're both baby faces, so it was okay in that respect. But it was like a little bit of lifting the veil on a few things. And Bobby Heenan virtually breaks character. He said, "I'm not going to do a wrestling interview. I'm going to talk to you man to man." He goes, "I've got neck problems. I've got nerve problems in my wrist. Can you guarantee my safety?" And Bischoff says no. And then later on they say Bischoff is they reveal he's the executive producer. So it's all it's a little bit lifting the curtain on reality, which brought that era of things in. So yeah, we're doing those Nitro watch-alongs. We've got a few guests lined up for pay-per-view reviews. But yeah, we've got someone who isn't a WCW alumnus, but is someone who has written a few books about it and is quite a character. So that interview will be dropping probably next week to mark our 4th birthday. And then we'll continue with the pay-per-views, and when we run out of pay-per-views, we'll do Clash of the Champions, and we'll keep going there's plenty left in the tank. A lot of the early 90s stuff is gone, and I think there's a lot of the later stuff is still around, because people seem to gravitate towards the early 90s or Halloween Havocs for some reason. People love a Halloween Havoc.
Yeah, it is weird. I mean, we love the Halloween Havoc. We've done a couple of them.
Do one in October time, yeah.
Yeah. But I still collect wrestling VHS. I've got a huge amount of them. I still buy them to this day. And the problem is, I think you have to, with the network, WWE owns the entire WCW catalog. So
Yeah.
we have the network, both Jordan and myself, because we review past pay-per-view. So if we wanted to watch, a WCW 1989, 1990 show, chances are, I might have it on VHS and I watch the VHS copy, but on the VHS, there's a load of matches that are left off it.
Oh,
and
yeah, that's what we've noticed. We've had a lot of people reviewing things because they remember having the VHS, and then they watch the main pay-per-view broadcast. There's as you say, matches or moments that went on there. So yeah,
it's great. I mean, I'm forever cursing Turner Home Video. If I watch the VHS and Jordan's watched it on the network, I'm like, hold on a minute. What do you mean so and so versus so and so? Well, what's happening here? And to be honest, to be fair to Vince, a lot of Vince's tapes were double the length. So the WCW ones were maybe about an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes, but the Silver Vision Coliseum video ones are about 3 hours. So you get pretty
shows,
much the whole thing. So no, it's great to hear, because like Jordan's saying, we love WCW. We we review their shows regularly. And
some of us love it a bit more than others. Someone in this little trio here has a framed poster of Thunder in Paradise on their wall.
Yeah, it's right in front of me, and it looks bloody beautiful. It's got Hogan with the patch. Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah. But it's one of those things. It's such a crazy story. And I mean, when we spoke to Lance Storm, he was telling us a few just baffling things. And the more you go into it, the more you go into it, the more you find out, the more you learn, and the more your jaw hits the ground at certain times. I mean, there's something I read the other week that someone shared on Twitter, and I mentioned this to our guest because we've already recorded the interview. I might as well say, so R.D. Reynolds, the guy who did Death of WCW and Wrestle.
Great book.
So he's
got the books.
And he it's basically, he confirmed that he'd heard this one as well, but they did a tour of Australia, I think in about 2000. It's the one.
Is this Hoovie's tour? Is it?
I was going to say it's the Hoovie tour, where he ran around the hotel lobby stark naked, and when he was off his tits on GHB, and said he was going to die or something. But anyway, they did like really good business. They had, I think they sold like 9,000 seat arenas out every time, even for like an episode of Thunder. But then they discovered that someone somehow had got this clause in the contract with the local promoter that WCW would buy back every unsold seat.
I had heard this story. Yeah, they didn't make any money on the tour.
They didn't just not make money. They lost $400,000 on a tour that they should have made a lot of money on. Now, I've worked on plenty of shows where you have, the FWA did this a lot, where you have a local promoter, and the deal always works that the company, the FWA, for example, would charge, they charge a flat fee to the local promoter to say, this is the cost of everything, and that cost is the cost of the ring, the crew, the wrestlers, the MC, the referees, all that, their wages, their travel expenses, any accommodation expenses that might be needed, whatever. You bundle all that together and you say, my show is going to cost, let's say, £10,000. Then the promoter will take that, will pay that, and then they basically take the ticket money. So then they know that, if I need to spend that amount of money, then I need to make this amount of money on the tickets, and it's the promoter's risk. And if he doesn't sell enough tickets, then he loses money. If he sells enough, he breaks even or makes a profit.
Crazy.
That's definitely the end of WCW in a nutshell, really, isn't it? It's how it, paying money to put on its own like tour in Australia and then coming home like short of pocket. It's a terrible way to end it for them. But they
were paying
movies tour.
They were paying people to sit at home. They were paying people that wrestled, less than a handful of matches. It was it did end up a complete shit show but behind the show, but there was still on the show there was still glimpses of great stuff going on. I mean,
Yeah.
even on the last pay-per-view, what was it, Greed, that we
Greed.
we did, you know, there was still great stuff going on with the cruiserweights.
Yeah, this is the irony, and we've said this on our podcast that the last couple of months of WCW, the actual in-ring product was tremendous. It was going up, but the trouble was no fucker was watching because they'd all been turned off from the previous months. But yeah, we did the show because we both loved WCW, and even if we take the piss out of the bad things, we do it with a tongue firmly in cheek and done so fondly because we really liked it. Another good episode we had was we did an interview with Guy Evans, who is British born, he lives in America now, but he's the author of the Nitro book. I can't remember the exact. It's called Nitro and something else. I forget what it is, but it's a really in-depth book. And the difference between that and every other wrestling book is he actually spoke to people who worked in the Turner offices, so people who had no connection with or knowledge of wrestling other than the fact that they worked in the Turner office, which was the owner of WCW, and talking about the TV channel decisions and the fact that like every year it was losing money and they didn't want to keep it, and Ted Turner wouldn't let them lose it because TBS always had wrestling on. And that's also a really good book.
God, international objects and shit like that.
Yeah. Dean, you've been an absolute star. We thank you for all the time you've given us. Just quickly before we let you go, what's next for Hooked on Wrestling? Are there any plans to move one into Hertfordshire? We'd love to drop by.
The next, I don't believe there may be a Survivor Series party, but there often isn't. So the next WWE one would most likely be the Royal Rumble. But there'll be, I know AEW Full Gear is in the middle of November, so that'll certainly be one. As far as like venues and going in Hertfordshire and that, if you know of a good venue and you think there'd be enough people that would be up for going to it, then by all means drop Hooked on Wrestling a line and we can see what
Chris will do that.
You know, I'll do that as well. I think Johnny Storm lives around the manor. I'm pretty sure Johnny lives around
indeed. Yes,
here.
I won't say exactly where he lives, but yeah, he does live in that neck of the woods.
I see him, yeah.
Yeah, but bear in mind that the Hooked on Wrestling parties started with do you remember Joel Ross, who used to host Wrestle Talk?
Yeah.
It basically started off with him and a couple of mates watching pay-per-views around his flat in Camden, where he lived at the time, and then a few more mates, and then for a laugh it was fancy dress. And someone actually showed at the AEW party a photo of like 4 people stood together in fancy dress in Joel's flat, and that was the first Hooked on Wrestling party. And then it expanded, and they said, do you think we could actually do these in a bar? And then they ran one in London, and it was a success, and it's grown and grown and grown. But we've got good relations with the WWE UK, and we for example, on our raffle, we have we get live event tickets. So like in the SummerSlam party, we gave away tickets for the live event at the O2. Yeah, we have a relationship with them. We have a relationship with AEW. As I said, we're the only authorized people to show those pay-per-views at parties. The raffle we had last week had a genuine signed Rey Mysterio mask that we'd been donated as a prize. So we get and we do a weekly quiz every Sunday night at 8 p.m. on the Hooked on Wrestling Events Facebook page. We do just for fun. We do a quiz, but what we do is anyone who enters the quiz and stays for the duration of the quiz, we enter into a draw, and each week we have a T-shirt from WWE Euroshop to give away. So it's we have plenty of our people have won free T-shirts off us, and let's face it, there's nothing better in the world than free T-shirts.
Or a raffle.
Yeah, a raffle.
When we used to do FWA shows in Morecambe, there would be times when the biggest pop of the night would be for the Morecambe raffle.
Yeah, that's British wrestling in a nutshell. That Love the raffles. With oh mate, well I'll tell you what, with the watch along, if it's fancy dress, I might dress up as Queewee then. Talking about, I can do me hair up, you know, some big pants. Love all that.
Just don't land knees first on anyone's face. Yeah.
Yes. It's
No,
been,
thank you. Thank you for
great,
having me
man.
on, guys. No, thanks. It's been really good fun.
No, it's been fantastic, and like you say, you know, you have been around for many years, and you've been here, you've seen it all, you've done everything backstage, in front of camera, commentating. You've literally done it all. So you know, it's just great to have you on. Someone, and you know, when I hear your voice, I see so many matches, man, and it's just, you know, thank you very much for just doing what you've done, man.
Oh, you're very welcome. I remember the first time we had, I think it was at a Dragon Gate show, and Mark Sloan had booked one of the British wrestlers. He'd booked Noam Dar, and he heard me talk, and he came rushing over to me, and he goes, "I've heard your voice on so many tapes, but I never knew what you looked like."
Oh mate, well, anyone who's done the same now, you know, Dean Ayass, thank you very much, dude. Like I say, I mean, you know, we will be listening to because WCW, and Jordan, we need to get in on those Hooked on Wrestling quizzes, bro.
Yeah, we need to get in on the quizzes. We need to try and find a venue so they can get something in Hertfordshire. Anyone that's still listening, still watching, remember to check out Because WCW or Hooked on Wrestling if you want to go and visit and see a live show, or if you want to see Fight Nation.
Yeah, Fight Nation Wrestling. It's
Yeah.
got that, the production value looks really good on that. I love what they've done with the set and everything.
Oh, the lights and there, it looks tremendous. Yeah,
really good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really good promotion. So definitely worth checking out. Yeah. Thank you for having me, guys.
No worries.
It's been wonderful. Thank you so much for sticking around. We can't appreciate it enough. Take care, man. Good to see you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay.
Cool.
Good, man. Thanks a lot, Dean. Honestly, sorry about the bullshit with the technical bit.
Oh, don't worry, it happens to us all.
I think we managed to cover pretty much everything that we did in the beginning. I think managed to recap it.
More or less, apart from maybe a bit about the foreign guys over in Britain, but that wasn't a major point anyway. But
no.
It was good fun. Do you know, it's good because it wasn't just like, oh, tell us about how you got started in wrestling. Tell us about this.
We hate that question, man. We hate it.
It was generally just about kind of chatting about how things are now and relaying it to wrestling history, and that. It was really, that was good. It felt like something different.
We generally, we hate that question anyway. Like, how did you get started? Like, they tell everyone that anyway. Like, we prefer that it comes out naturally, and for us it did with you, because you talked about Hammerlock in '93.
Yeah,
with Doug Williams and stuff. So it's a nice way to get in there.
And that all came about from tape trading. Yeah, because I was a tape trader, and one of the people that got tapes off me was before he was known as this, but it was Alex Shane. And then he said to me, "I'll come down. Do you want to come down to Hammerlock? They're doing these trial training sessions." And so I went down with him. And that mate I said who came along to the Bret Hart show, my mate who lives up in Scotland, he was the other person who came with me. So there was four of us. There was me, my mate Mark, Alex, and have you heard of a guy called Adam Mansfield, Muscles Mansfield? He's a British wrestling veteran as well. Okay. He'd be a good person to get on. He's helped train loads of people over the years. That's how I kind of made connection with real wrestling people, because that's where I met Andre.
That's great, man. We could probably chat with the amount of FWA 1PW, the amount of shows that we've seen, and even live shows. I mean, Jordan was actually at International Showdown. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I got dragged out of work early by a mate who said, "I've just booked tickets on the day," and he said he came and picked me up from work before I was meant to finish and said, "Look, we need to go. If we want to be there on time, we're leaving now." So I snuck out of work. And it was still about an hour and 20-minute drive.
Fantastic.
But yeah, it was a really great time, that was.
Yeah, we've all done. I remember when I was a kid at school. Now, what year? It was to have been, actually it would have been 90, it would have been March of 93. So I would have been 16, 17, something like that. And I had to ask my my teacher at school if I was allowed to leave school a bit early to go to Wembley Arena to go to this WCW wrestling show, and he said, yeah, all right then, because I was a good kid at school generally, so they let me in. And that was where Vader lost the world title to Sting.
Oh, he lost it. He won it back.
He won it back in Dublin, but that was the night he lost it. So yeah, we witnessed the world title change hands on a house show. Which, admit it, at the time I wasn't happy about because I was a huge Vader fan. But then when you realise how big it is,
did they recognise that?
Yeah, absolutely,
yeah.
And yeah, and I remember my teacher seeing me the next day. He was like, "Was it good?" And I was like, "Oh my god, the world title change hands! That's never happened in the history of wrestling ever!" And yeah, it was good. Yeah, it's things like that that just that's where you get your passion from.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's man. I think we could do this all night, but
like I say, I mean,
we shouldn't.
We really we've spoke about a million times reviewing International Showdown or some FWA shows because we like I say we were trained by Paul Ash and Phil, know, so we also do you know Sunset Skip, Rich Whitehouse? Yeah, so we were trained
as well.
Rich and Famous, yeah,
Rich and Famous, so that's what it was, his original thing, so we really want to review some old FWA stuff, so maybe we might give you another shout at some point.
Sure.
And get you in on that, like No Surprises, a show like that, or
because is that if No Surprises, was that No Surprises 3 or 4, the one that's got Jody and Flash?
One of the. I've got both of them on tapes of the Strong Style. The Strong Style tapes.
Because someone's uploaded them all onto YouTube now as well, haven't they? I think
that's right.
But yeah, if you I did a lot of stuff on No Surprises 4, and there's I would have a great story to tell you about the Drew McDonald Dave Taylor match as well. Actually, in fact, there's so many stories about all of that. Let's pencil that in for somewhere down the line, because there's so many little stories I can tell you about that show. Actually,
oh man, we love it. We really, I'm not sure if there's many podcasts or video casts that do reviews that actually done by British guys that actually talk about British wrestling. I'm not sure if they're
none I'm aware of. No,
there's none. And we literally try and talk about it as much as we can. So it'll be great to do some FWA reviews of you because you are the man for that shit.
Yeah, that'd be good fun.
The 1PW stuff as well. If we could get you in, that would be great, man.
Yeah, we'll pencil something in down the line, definitely.
Cheers, Dean.
Cool. All right, guys.
Appreciate
really
your time, buddy. Thanks a lot,
welcome. Man. Take care.
Cheers,
bye.
Bye.
So yeah, that's it. Thank you so much to Dean for coming on and talking about his experiences and his shows and his ventures like Hooked on Wrestling. That sounds amazing. If you're not already checking it out, go and check it out. That's all I can say about that. Thank you so much for listening, for watching, for sticking around. We got some amazing things coming up. We cannot quite mention them just yet. We will get to it.
Mate, we've got so much shit going on. So Dean Ayass is the fucking man for British wrestling. He is the voice of a generation. You know what I mean? Like I said in Step Brothers, I've been called the songbird of a generation. He is the voice of a generation of British wrestling for a good few years. So we've got more British wrestling guests coming up, but we, like Jordan says, we have got great guests coming up, but we have got some very big announcements, but we can't quite spill the tea just yet.
We can't.
It will be happening very soon, and we cannot bloody wait. So
thank you for sticking around. Thank you for listening, watching. Remember to hit those buttons.
Slap the bell.
Slap our bells. Touch our bells. Caress the bell. Do whatever you want. Just make sure the bell is touched.
Do it.
Listen, follow. The socials by now. They're on the video if you can watch it and see it. If you can't, at Chat Grapple Pops for Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can't miss us. We're all over it. We're everywhere. Check the stories. We're always doing something. Whether or not it's fun or not, that's for you to decide. If you love it, if you hate it, we don't care. Just thank you for sticking around. Thank you for watching. We're about to go take some beak and improve our promos.